Welcome to the first official post Assassin's Creed Unity, but the very first official uh, s- um top game review community discussion. I'm here with Ace Nelson and my chief moderator, uh, Happy Dog. And right now, we're going to be talking about Citizens of Earth. Now, we're looking at this game that that I power played through. I think it's going to end up being kind of a legendary thing that went down. But
Oh,
Citizens of Earth is
no
a
kidding.
game that was developed by Eden Industries, and it was published by Atlas, and we know how much people love Atlas. So some pretty interesting stuff came down the line. If you didn't get to see my entire playthrough of Citizens of Earth on Twitch, there's obviously going to be a supercut coming up here really soon. You'll be able to check that out here on YouTube. Um, but when I sat down to play Citizens of Earth, I thought I was just going to kind of take my time through it. But no, it kind of turned into a challenge. And I sat down, and there's the moment where I ended up doing a 24-hour stream on that. And let me tell you how fucking tired I was. But it was pretty amazing. So I actually beat the game in 2 play sessions. And my total game time was right around 40-ish hours, which is pretty decent, especially for a game of its cost. It was normally $14.99. You're also getting your full disclosure here. I did not pay for Citizens of Earth. I'm actually on Atlas's PR mailing list for that, and they did provide copies of Citizens of Earth for multiple platforms for Steam as well as the PlayStation Vita and the PlayStation 4. I did my review for that game on the PlayStation 4. I did not spend any money to play that. I am also not being asked to have a particular point of view or any review. I had no contact with the publisher, Atlas, outside of what platform are you going to review on? Okay, here's some keys. That's it, so everyone knows. But sitting down to play Citizens of Earth and to kind of give you the synopsis of it, and the idea is that it really is, the way I described it is, it is a love letter. First and foremost, through and through, it is a love letter to Earthbound. It is a love letter to pretty much every major RPG that came up, but I'd say between 1985 and 19, we'll say 93. It follows a very specific method of combat, such as when you get into combat screens, being or seeing the backs of your characters, and then just kind of seeing a generally uh, not very animated avatar of your enemies on screen. You can see how many people are involved in the fight, and just using a typical combat text prose to kind of tell you what's going on. The plot of the game really just kind of revolves around the vice president of Earth, not the United States, just Earth himself, just coming off of the campaign trail and all that other stuff, and he goes home to see his mom and see his brother, and then some wild shit pops off, and the game just goes fucking nuts, and it's just kind of it's a little weird. It's a weird game. I definitely thought that there was some interesting things, and you could see where they took inspirations from all over the place. One of the interesting things that happened during my playthrough is that the developers of Citizens of Earth caught wind of the Top Game Review, and for a little while there, I was the top viewed stream on Twitch for that title. Um, those developers actually showed up and watched me play through most of that game, and they interacted with the audience, and I thought it was kind of neat that people finally got that opportunity to just to see the whole dynamic, to go from developer right there who can answer questions for you live, see someone in the middle of looking over it and reviewing, and also the people who are likely to end up buying or not buying the game, the whole circle of life, so to speak. And that was really interesting for me. What was your guys' take on watching me play through Citizens of Earth?
Well, as far as as far as actually having the developers come in, having Proc and Robin show up, it was really cool actually having them there with us, interacting with us, because it was like there was no middleman. There was that unfiltered, undiluted sense of really being able to communicate with the guys who made the game or had a hand in making it while watching you actually go through the finished product.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That was really nice. There was no PR in between. It was just like, hey, we're here, we're watching this, and it was interesting to kind of see them looking at how someone was going to go through that, especially in the manner of which now that people are familiar with how I power play through games.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really a trip to sit there, play it, and the developer in question, Proc, was sitting there and said, yeah, my fastest playthrough has been about 30 hours. And I spend a good chunk of time actually grinding and setting myself up in a way that, I would just knock things out. And so to see him go, wow, you're making some interesting decisions, or I did a lot of things that people didn't expect. We'll kind of talk about uh, the vice president's little brother.
Oh my God! You
The
mean
face of
you mean the
mercy.
overpowered mailman?
The overpowered FedEx guy, seeing
Yo, what can
me,
Brown do for you?
yeah, he was just that dude wrecked. Like he wrecked from start of the game to the end of the game. He was in my party like probably 80% of the playthrough, just because he wasn't particularly strong in anything, but he wasn't weak either. And so he could just get in there, and for most fights, he would knock somebody the fuck out.
I
The
mean, come on, you were two-shotting bosses with him.
Yeah, it was great. If you hadn't heard about that, I ended up two-shotting the last boss in the game, the last proper boss fight, just because I found a loophole in the game design, and I thought that was really an interesting moment in which I'm sitting there doing that. The developer sees me doing that, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is a design flaw, but for them it wasn't. And so that almost felt like a conflict. Ultimately, I'm still of the opinion that this was a poor design decision that ended up happening. I guess I should kind of elaborate on what I did in Citizens of Earth. In that game, you're playing as the Vice President, as stated, the Vice President of Earth, and then you can end up recruiting up to 40 other characters who will come along with you on this little adventure, and you can have 3 that you main, and then the other 37 are just kind of on call when you need them. Every single character that you recruit has some kind of additional talent besides just direct combat. They can provide services like such as the vice president's little brother works for basically the shipping company, and so if you need to stop at a store or whatever, since he works at FedUps, you can place orders through him and they'll be delivered to you, but it takes real time for those items to get there. Another very interesting one, I suppose we would say, like you end up recruiting a car salesman. Well, he's the guy that allows you to drive a car around town and get where you're going to go, to just kind of navigate faster, things like that. Even the vice president's mom, her job is to give you advanced strategies on combat and exploiting weaknesses and things like that. So what ended up happening in my playthrough was that I ended up getting the yoga instructor, and the yoga instructor allows you to de-level your character and get some of the stat points that you've gained back. And there's no trade-off cost for this. It's not like you de-level your character. No, you get all those stat points back that they gained, and you can redistribute them anywhere you want. They'll be de-leveled to level 1, but you get all those points. So if you wanted to push someone back to level 1, you could have their attack power be the same as it was when they attained level 50. In fact, if you do it right, you can actually make their attack power even higher than what it was. So I took the yoga instructor's talent, And then there's a teacher that allows you to, for all your other party members who aren't actively with you, you can send them to school and they'll gain experience. Again, it's supposed to be in real time, but there are ways around that. So if you pay, $1,000, you can send them to school for a couple of hours and they'll get all that combat experience and they can level and so on and so forth. The only downside to that is that they don't get the bonuses that they get from based on who they're paired with if they were in your active party. So you do that, and I believe it goes up to like 8 hours, and you pay like 10,000. Again, I'm just going off top of head here, and they can gain a real crap ton of experience. The only cost is, well, this is a lot of money. And then finally, there's a scientist who can control the flow of time. You can rewind time back or push it forward. There's actually real-time weather in the game. There's real-time weather, so the weather can dynamically change to rain, snow, sandstorms, all kinds of stuff. And you can also, you go through a full day-night cycle. What I ended up doing was taking that yoga instructor, the scientist, and the teacher, and by combining their skills together, I found a way to make characters, as Ace was talking about with me, two-shot and bosses. I found a way to take the vice president's brother, combine him with school, and I found a way to make money really, really fast, quickly, and efficiently. And what I would end up doing was take the brother, get him leveled up to 30, 40, something like that, artificially through the teacher, use the yoga instructor, de-level him, reassign all his stat points to agility and attack power. And then finally, just repeating the cycle and using the scientist to make all those things happen instantly. So what ended up happening with this character and why we laughed so hard about him, because he looks so friendly, I ended up making him super powered. Almost nothing could resist his attacks. He hit harder than anything else in the game. We could confirm that at this point. Nobody out punches this guy. And
no, the
he had combat
bodybuilder
priority.
asks, "Bro, do you lift? Do you
Right.
even lift?" You look at the postman, and he's like, "I do."
He's like, yeah, I've been known to lift from time to time. So I've got this character who hits ridiculously hard. He doesn't have any defense. He doesn't need any defense because he hits so hard, and because of his agility, he always had combat priority. So he always, quite literally hit first. Like if he swung first, you were done. That was it. And so at that point, the game became really trivial, and people were cracking up. We were all laughing about that, and ultimately, even though it was really interesting to feel like, yeah, I got one over on the system, I feel like it did ultimately kind of diminish from the overall quality and from the expected experience, and I feel like that was an issue. It was quite a trick that I pulled off there, and I feel like
Um,
that was a really gross oversight.
if I can play devil's advocate on that one, though,
Sure, go ahead.
it reminds me, well, seeing as how I wasn't there for that particular part. I wasn't there to see just how you turned Mr. Postman into, oh my god, this dude hits like a howitzer. What it kind of reminds me of is how you can find various materia setups in Final Fantasy VII, and if you put enough time into it and you put the right materia together, you can pretty much walk through the game like it was Sunday at the park. I
Mm.
mean, take for example one simple two materia setup that if you put them both in linked slots, you're almost untouchable by anything outside of direct damage. And that would be putting added effect and, let's say, even a level 2 Hades summon materia on your armor. I mean, you do that and you've pretty much got like an impromptu ribbon, so anything that might be able to take you down with status effects won't be able to do so unless it's something like really outlandish, like instant death.
So what it sounds like, and this is a point of view I hadn't considered, when they say, oh, don't worry about it, it's by design, but I didn't hear anything else than that. What it sounds like to me, what you're actually describing is they may have intentionally in keeping with the spirit of the RPG era, where we did all kinds of stuff like that outside of intention. Are you trying to get to the idea that maybe they did that on purpose to see if someone would find it?
That's very possible.
Huh.
Yeah, I actually thought of that in a similar way because I remember a whole bunch of other RPGs where there were these little spots that would eventually be found where you could actually do these sort of power levels and such. Not exactly in this way, but you could exploit the system a little bit to get like rare items, lots of gold, you name it. Like
So it's not.
this is something that's happened rather regularly as far as RPGs go.
Hmm.
I mean, that 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 sort of that sort of metagame Easter egg. That's the kind of thing that I remember happening a lot, especially in like hell, even RPGs leading up to the PS2 era, like being able to replace certain bosses in Valkyrie Profile Samaria to power level your characters like mad.
Hmm. You know, hmm. Yeah, it's something to think about. I mean, to me, especially having come from that era, all of us having, grown up in that era, and these guys obviously did as well, and it's very clear that they were so inspired by just that entire era of RPG and following those same design decisions that, yeah, I'm gonna have to see that it's absolutely possible that that was not any kind of oversight and it was intentional just to see if someone would think to put those things together. Um, especially because again, like they were right there and they're like, yeah, this is fine, and I'm like, are you
Are
sure?
you sure?
Like, yeah, like, are you sure about this? Because I'm over here kicking ass and I'm breaking the entire game in the process by doing it. Um,
I think
what's especially important about that thing that I found, I think, and even though it's possible, but I'm still kind of edging towards I don't know if someone thought that through enough, simply because you can do it so early if you know how to do it.
Yeah,
Like the
like Zed is saying in
scientist and
the
all that.
chat.
Yeah. Oh,
You
go
know,
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, it's like Zed was saying in the chat. It's doubtful that they did it on purpose, but with the number of options that you have, with the sheer amount of customizability that you have, with all these characters that you recruit and the other functions that they have, it stands to reason that there's probably something broken in there just given that many possible options.
Yeah, it's so weird to see those skills combined in that way, because I do remember seeing some information about the game where, talking about, yeah, here's the teacher that can level up other characters that are not in your party, and so on and so forth. And it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And from my point of view, especially when I was in the middle of playing it, and we were, having that discussion as it was happening, and I was trying to think, well, how do you keep this from being a breakable thing? And the only way that I could see, like, to not completely destroy each of those things, but have them still accomplish a task, is that if you're going to de-level, and really the key comes down to the yoga instructor. Like, the other characters are fine. Sending characters off to, if you can grind out the money and then, send them off to get leveled, I don't see anything broken about that. I don't see anything broken about just shifting the time forward and back, because there's certain events in the game that you have to do at a certain time. It's always, I look at the yoga instructor, I'm just like, you're the problem here. Like, and especially because of it not costing you anything to do that shifting. Like, you lose your levels and you think, well, that's got to be a cost. Not when you take that guy, that one character, and then you throw them into a party with other really powerful people and they run up and kick somebody in the face, and then suddenly that guy levels like 11, 10, 10, 11, 12 levels, boom, in one fight, and you get them right back to where they were. I would say that the only way to fix that without breaking the yoga instructor, but allowing you to rearrange those stats and things like that closer to what you want, is that there should have been a skill point cost that went with that. So you didn't get it back as many skill points as you had generated. That you were giving up. Like if you lost 2 points for every level, it would end up being a kind of a diminishing return. So that way you can customize the characters that you want in the manner that which you want, but ultimately you're still going to have to work at it. Something like that. And I'm just throwing stuff out there. It was just that there was no negative consequence in any capacity to do that. In fact, you just as we said, I could exploit that to make characters far more powerful than what they were supposed to be. At least that's the way it appeared.
I I actually think that maybe having a scaling measure on the leveling with the skill points might have been better. Kind of like how Dark Souls does it.
Hmm.
Like you level up, it costs more souls, and it eventually reaches sort of a crazy amount of souls that you need to level up.
Right.
So
Anything like that. Just a real
Or
cost,
maybe
a diminishing return.
like like reducing the amount of stat points refunded when you de-level.
Right, exactly. Something. Hell, you could even just have the yoga instructor just charge you to do it, and that way it's okay. You can do this, but you're gonna have to make money to do it. It was the same thing. It's like with the
Yep,
teacher.
pay for
It's why
yoga
the
lessons.
teacher wasn't broken. It's like, wait a minute. No, you can send these people off. You can get them leveled, but you're gonna have to power up, or not power up. Excuse me. You're gonna have to go out and grind out some bucks, or figure out a way to generate a good amount of cash before you can do this. So it cost you something to. It was the convenience cost. Yeah, you don't have to take these people out and level them by hand, but it's gonna cost you. It's really what it came back to, and it's just that one. It was the weak spot in the whole system because I didn't see a whole lot of other things that you could exploit with all those different characters and all those different skills. That doesn't mean they were there. It's just I didn't see them, especially considering I spent 24 hours of the entire game in one stretch.
and that brings me to a point that I kind of wanted to talk about, which is uh, I think one of the things that I really liked about Citizens of Earth is how every character seems to have its place there. Like you have 40-ish characters which you play as, but they all feel like they're there, like they belong there, like they
It's
have a
like
place in the world.
it's like the numerous comparisons, the numerous influences that people have been comparing this game to. I mean, I I pretty much stick by my original opinion that Citizens of Earth is like equal parts Suikoden, equal parts Superhero League of Hoboken, and equal parts Earthbound.
I 100% agree.
Like,
Like on the Suikoden front, absolutely, it's the same concept as that, where you had 108 characters to recruit. Not all of them were combatants, but the majority of them were actual fighters, and you kind of did that same thing. And as Happy Dog is saying, with everyone felt like they had their place, they had their talent, and they had a use. I 100% agree with that. I did not feel that any of the characters were redundant because they brought something really unique to the table, some kind of neat feature, something that you couldn't get anywhere else. It was a little weird to see certain things, certain options, certain skills um, locked behind characters. We all laughed about the school mascot, the French volcano, and that guy had some really good and really interesting buffs, debuffs, and everything. All of his skills were related to cheerleading, or demoralizing the opponents in some way, shape, or form. But his unique skill was the ability to tweak the difficulty level of the game. So if you wanted to make, combat twice as hard and get more rewards, you could do that. You could make it even 3 times as hard. Let me tell you, the difficulty scaling in that game, I'm glad that there was minor little in-betweens in that. Like you could only make it, 1.5 times as hard if you wanted to, or 2.2 or whatever like that. access to those difficulty levels were also based on that character's skill as well. He had to actually be leveled up in order to get the full range of difficulty options, and you could even under-level the game, which is really neat too. Like, if you're just a person that could not handle the strategy and could not handle the depth involved, you can make the game ridiculously easy, but your rewards got super, super nerfed. They didn't let you have easy wins, like you had to go and engage in every combat, things like that. So they gave you a lot of options, and they did give you a lot of tweaking and controllability over the experience that I'm not used to seeing in other RPGs.
Yes, I think one of the bigger draws to this game has to be the amount of options you have.
Yeah, and
It's
back on the
pretty silly.
and back on the characters, there's one thing think you could say that they drew inspiration from Chrono Cross for, as far as each of the characters, and it's the fact that although, let's say, in Chrono Cross, a lot of the characters by themselves felt redundant from a mechanical standpoint, each of their personalities was very well defined. I mean, even to the point where certain characters actually had like the accents in their text dialogue.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. From what I had heard prior to me starting the game, I had just heard rumblings from my community about other people's reviews and just kind of talking about the characterization of people. And when I sat down and played it, I thought the characters were really, really richly developed. For especially a cast that large. Like, usually with many of the characters, you either needed to do a small side quest, which was anything but small, often. But you had to do a quest, or you kind of had to get to know who that person was, what they did, what their function was, and you kind of got to know them in just the right amount of way, just enough to make them really relevant to the overall feel of the game. And I really did enjoy the myriad of personalities, and it was just so fresh, and it was really unique to see that. I think one thing that caught me by surprise for a game of this cost and size, which was rather small for my particular download, let me dovetail for a second. That was something I thought was weird, that the installation sizes for the game were very different depending on the platform you were on. Like, I think on the PS4 one, I think it was like 1.7 gig or whatever. And then, like, I hear on the Wii U, again, I only heard this, but it was huge. It was like 6 or 7 gig, something like that. And then it was a completely different size on Steam. And we ended up finding out about that. We were like, what's up with that? And they were like, yeah, it's a compression problem based on the platform. So, like, the Wii U had completely different compression systems, and so they couldn't compress anything. And we were like, that's interesting. And it was really neat because you just got a straight answer. Like,
Yeah.
it was just like, why is this way? People were like, this is really odd. Why is this download so huge? Well, this is why. You had the developer, boom, right there, and tell you exactly why. And people were like, oh, that makes sense. Thank you for the answer. So that was kind of a weird little refreshing side thing that happened. But the reason I brought that up was because based on the download size, again, for the PS4, I was shocked at how much dialogue was spoken in that game. Like, wow, from start to finish. Like, I would, just to guess off top of head, I'd probably say 65, maybe 70% of the dialogue that can be read in game was completely voiced over. Like, there was only small stuff in between side quests or whatever that didn't have any voice work, but the voice actors, I thought, I don't even know who they were. I thought they did a really, really great job of characterizing this very much so spoof of human beings and people, and the over-the-top nature of it.
A good number of us in the stream during your playthrough were actually able to recognize some of the voice actors, and there were some pretty big names in there. So it's to be expected that the quality of the acting itself actually came through really well. I mean, freaking the vice president, I believe, was voiced by Kirk Thornton. and you could hear him in a bunch of stuff. I mean, if you played Dynasty Warriors, then you'll immediately recognize him as Shahod.
Oh, now I know. Now I know where I heard that voice before.
Let's see. Oh yeah, or for those of us playing Guilty Gear, Potemkin.
Was he Potemkin?
Yep.
Wow. Now I got to go play Guilty Gear again. We're going to have to fire that up. Like, wait a minute, that didn't sound like the vice president, eh?
You're gonna
But
get slammed again.
when we were going through that experience, let's go back to the obvious callback to Earthbound, to Chrono Cross, all that, and we're playing through this game, and the game was a visual feast. I thought that, I'm thinking really hard on this. I thought that the game did a great job, and something I call what it looked, it does a good job of visually representing what I remember playing as a kid. Graphics on games weren't, obviously, they weren't nearly as great as they are today. Someone's going to go, hey, pixel art's fantastic. No, I'm just talking about detail. I'm talking about the ability to get in depth, so on and so forth. But it's like you look at Citizens of Earth and you look at Earthbound, and it's like, okay, well, obviously, this is just much smaller stuff. But when I look at games from the past, or when I sit down and think about them and remember them, the way that I remember these things are so much more detailed and elaborate, because our minds do a really good job of filling in blanks on that kind of stuff, right? And even though it doesn't look that way, that's the way we kind of recall that stuff. Citizens of Earth just bypasses that altogether and puts, directly what they wanted it to look like right there in front of your face. And I thought that was really great, simply because, here's the mind-blowing part. There was one key artist behind the entire game. The art director for the game showed up at one point, and we had an opportunity to ask a couple of questions about that, and it was incredible to see that much artwork in that level of detail, and very unique looking. And just to see, I mean, you could see so much passion went into just designing and making that personality of those characters stand out without having to, do it through characterization or voice work. It was just, you knew so much about each character just based on their appearance. Like the Vice President of Earth, for example, he's got this crazy shit-eating grin on his face, like almost the entire game, and he's just like, haha, he's got politician written all over him. You look at his brother, and he's just kind of homely and chilling. You look at the VP's mom, and she's like that classic RPG, very homely, just good-natured mom. Or you look at the scientist, and she's got this huge poof, crazy hair, and she's got the Bride of Frankenstein style gray hair streaked through it, and she just looks like a mad fucking scientist, and you're like, she is probably going to say something crazy, and sure enough, she would say some crazy stuff. And I thought that they did a really great job of capturing that essence, capturing the spirit of the world that they were trying to get out there, which is, this world is absolutely silly at all times. And so I thought that the story elements itself just matched up really, really well with that art. And to turn around, seeing that the voice actors, all of them, got it. They instantly picked it up, And so every time you hear the vice president talk, you're sitting there and you're like, this guy's an asshole. Because he's just so disconnected from everyone. And it's like, yeah, he's an asshole. That's kind of the intent, because they're kind of like, politicians can kind of be jerks. And so I thought that there was a great meshing. There was a great... I'm trying to think of how to describe that. It's just, I've not seen such an idea come together in all the key ways, through the audio, through the visual, and through the narrative, and see them just come together, and it's a very natural fit. Nothing felt
Composition
shoehorned in.
overall.
Yeah, just the total composition just clicked right together. It was very smooth, and it wasn't like in other games where you can really see the gaps. Like, you're like, this showed up as an afterthought. You know, one of those things where it's like, what the hell is this doing here? It's kind of like, almost like where those games where we sit down and play and it's like, you just put in multiplayer because you were trying to get the multiplayer dollars. You know, your game wasn't even designed around this, and everyone can see it. That never happened in Citizens of Earth, where every feature that was put in there feels like it was just right there from the start, always intentionally part of that design process.
I mean, the best way I could really look at this is, and just considering, excuse me, just considering that, and considering your review and playthrough and the masochistic experience that was Assassin's Creed Unity, and comparing that to Citizens of Earth, it was like literally night and day. Not just from an audiovisual standpoint, you know, big budget AAA title compared to, you know, a relative indie 2D sprite-based vector art title that almost didn't see the light of day if it weren't for Atlas. But also from the standpoint of just how comparatively smoothly it played, how comparatively enjoyable the experience was, because there weren't so many mechanical issues with it.
Right. You know, it was a night and day experience. I think not just for me playing, but for the audience as well. Like when we were sitting down, like I can tell you this right now, for those of you that didn't get to see the whole playthrough, or you didn't get to see any of it at all, we were all basically laughing every 10 goddamn minutes, like almost like clockwork in that game, like seeing just some of the utterly silly enemies, or sometimes we were just seeing, like, hearing some of the crazy shit that would come out of the vice president's mouth. Like, dog, what are you talking about? Like, he was just saying wild shit. They captured our attention. And if you were here for, you know, seeing Assassin's Creed Unity go down, and that was just basically me fucking angry for 20 hours. Like, I made the goddamn effort to have fun. I was like, I don't give a fuck. It's Assassin's Creed. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to play this, I'm going to have a good time. Nope, it didn't happen. The only time we laughed, and this is the tragedy, the only time we laughed and just went into stitches is usually when something went the fuck wrong in such a horrifically spectacular way that we couldn't help but laugh. It was like
or when
I ran around that statue a couple of times and, you know, broke line of sight, and then went invisible, went incognito that way. I was like, did that fucking happen? Did that seriously happen? Like, and we started cracking up because I was able to repeat it. I was just like, I'm just saying, I felt like I was fucking playing Duck, Duck, Goose with that shit. And that's basically what it was. It was Duck, Duck, Goose. Bam! And I took off running. I was like, you can't catch me. Incognito. I was like, what?
Oh my
what
god!
The hell is this?
Oh my god! No!
So turn around and then go to
Assassin
to play Citizens of Earth, and we're laughing because we're like, oh my god, that's so funny, or that's so clever. The Secret Service agents in the bush that would just pop up out of nowhere, like, you son of a bitch. Like, we were laughing so hard over that, and so I think that what we're really looking at here, and I know we're comparing completely different genres, we're comparing completely different games here, but it's just kind of a weird thing to look at, where it's like I dropped $60 on Assassin's Creed Unity out of pocket to make sure I sat down and reviewed that game. If I had paid the $15 for Citizens of Earth, which I was intending to, I wasn't even expecting to get those keys in advance. I was just going to do it anyway because I was like, well, Atlas is publishing it. This is not something that they typically do, so on and so forth. And I was really interested because, well, fuck, I love Earthbound. So it was already on my to-buy list, and I was like, oh, okay. But to look at cost versus what you got, You know, you sit down. I played 20 hours of Assassin's Creed Unity and just walked away bitter as hell, and had spent that $60. And I sat down and played Citizens of Earth, and I was satisfied. Now the key here is I didn't say it's the greatest thing known to man. I said I was satisfied. It was. They said this is going to be a classically inspired RPG, and that's exactly what I fucking got. And oftentimes for me, that's 50% of just getting a recommendation. For me, it's did you deliver what you promised? You
Does it do
know,
what it says on the tin?
basically that's it. That's all you have to do. If you don't do what you said you were going to do, and you're trying to convince people that that's still what's up, and then it doesn't, I'm going to probably fail you out. Just like that. And so I sat down and playing Citizens of Earth, I got exactly that, and I got more. I didn't expect it to be that funny. I didn't expect the level of depth that I had found in the combat, which, even though it was classically inspired, there was some new stuff going on in here, stuff I hadn't seen before. And the way you set up, different attacks, and the way you could set up combos and all that stuff, it was really intriguing. I didn't expect to have as much fun as I did with a $15 game, and I certainly didn't expect to get 40 hours of playtime out of it. So you look at that, and I'm just like, there's a lot of value here for if a person goes, I'm looking for a classic RPG experience, because that's not a game for everybody, and I think we all know this at this point.
Yeah.
If you were looking, if you're like, man, I wish I could play some more Earthbound, and I go, hey, go and check out Citizens of Earth. If you're into Earthbound, if you're into that type of RPG, go and try that. You're gonna probably find something you like about it. You're gonna get a lot of fun for your dollar spent. And especially since you're probably not going to power play it like I did, you're not going to do it in 2 days. You're probably going to play that over the course of a few weeks, in some cases maybe even a few months. You will get so much for, per dollar spent that I think people are going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and the thing about this game is that not only it delivered it in a constant basis. Like the game keeps itself going pretty well. Like it doesn't have any big swings in enjoyment.
The general pacing, you mean?
Not quite the pacing of the game, more like how enjoyable the game is pretty much constant throughout a playthrough. The game keeps being good all the way through without fluctuating much in the quality of the fun.
Right. The quality of the fun stayed pretty high. We've, over the course of this discussion of that fun, we've had some pretty important things or pretty positive things to say about the game, but we also do have to talk about the bad, based on my playthrough. And there was some bad stuff. There was some pretty bad stuff that annoyed the holy fuck out of me. Like I'm not even gonna sugarcoat that. I was just like, what the fuck is this? There were some issues that were, at the very least, as bad as, again, comparing two different types of games, but we're talking about quality of build stuff here. And in that sense, when you're looking at quality of build, quality of work, that completely surpasses genre of game. And I'll tell you right now, Citizens of Earth crashed probably 2 to 3 times more than Assassin's Creed Unity did on my PS4. When I buy a console, I don't buy that shit to suffer through crashes. When you sit down on a PC, and how there's so many working parts behind just your operating system, behind Windows or Mac or whatever it is you're running, right? Or Linux, so on and so forth. There's a lot of working parts just to get that to work, and then you're running another piece of software on top of that, very complex software, and then you have to deal with your own particular hardware issues. How much RAM do you have? Well, how fast is your hard drive? What's your video card like? Are you using DirectX? Are you using OpenGL? I mean, there are so many goddamn variables in play there. And so it's not surprising to know that every now and again you may run into incompatibilities, or there's systems that this just isn't going to function on in the manner of which you expect it to. There's an expectation that those things can and will occur on a PC. But when I sit down and I play on a console, you play on that hardware with the general expectation of this should be very stable, because if I sit down and play Citizens of Earth on a PlayStation 4, for example, or I do it on mine, I do it on my best friend's, I do it on the guy that lives in Timbuktu on his PlayStation 4, it should be a consistent experience across the board, right? It should be stable, because if it works on one PlayStation 4, it should work on all PlayStation 4s. It works on one 3DS, it should work the same on all 3DSs, so on and so forth. And I shouldn't have to deal with those types of crashes, and I shouldn't have to deal with those types of bugs. And that was really irritating and frustrating for me during that time. Now, my hope is that Eden Industries has seen, especially, again, because I had the developers right there, and I've got, couple hundred people sitting there watching me play, and then boom, your game is out there, it's live, your baby's out in the wild, and then blah, it falls over, and it trips and falls over the edge of the table, and it's like, oh shit. I hope that them being able to see that and pinpoint where those weird little crashes came from, at least it gave them enough to go and investigate. They didn't have to they didn't even have to look at a ticket or listen to someone's vague description of what might have been going on. They can just sit down and look at it and go, right, they watched it happen live, and it's like, why did that happen? Let me go look and see why that occurred. Sometimes those bugs repeated pretty easily, but for the majority of the time, they didn't repeat on themselves.
And what was really cool about it was that, again, the dev was right there watching it, and you guys were like literally able to exchange notes. Yeah. And I was like, okay, so this is what happened. This is probably how you wound up triggering it. So it's an issue with this particular part of the code. So we can go in there, patch that sucker up really quick.
It's really interesting that you brought that up, because one thing that we can talk about will be how they dealt with it. And I know this isn't something that's directly part of the review, because my job is to review the product, not necessarily the people. But during this community discussion,
customer service does go a long way with how you evaluate a product, though.
Abso-freaking-lutely. And that was a big thing, where you saw your baby out there in the wild, you saw it tripping and falling over itself, and rather than getting offended at the customer, you guys watching are getting offended at the reviewer because I found something wrong, they were quick to go, that's not supposed to happen. Let me go looking into that, because here's what got my attention. They kicked this game out there, they put it out there, and they want it to be better. They wanted it to be great. And for you guys who weren't there, didn't get to hear it, when I'm saying, hey, this big issue has come up. I got stuck in a sprite, or tiles didn't lay over each other correctly, or a crash happened. The developer was going and looking right then and there. The second that I got done seeing it, he's like, hey, can you show me where that happened on, the previous stream, and, things like that. And I'm like, yeah, look at this little window here. They went and looked immediately while watching me play. Now, that's fucking incredible. That's amazing. To where they care that much to stop whatever it was that they were doing. They're watching me play, and then they stop what they're doing and go, let's go find this out, because if this happened to him, it could likely happen to other people. That's incredible. Like, this goes beyond, like I said, putting in bug tickets and things like that, where he's going, I know exactly what that is. I am going to make sure that that fix happens, so that that doesn't happen to any other person. That was really cool.
And I think that's one of the things that maybe more developers should do. Maybe they should have a sort of a... Maybe they should keep an eye on people who are streaming the game.
Yeah, kind of like having a beat cop or a beat reporter. Someone who's out there among the people, among the players, watching, stuff like streams and YouTube videos, and hey, if like say someone puts up a montage of, you know, crashes for this particular game on YouTube, then maybe reach out to that person and say, hey, could you go back through it, recreate these bugs, recreate these crashes, show me what happened so that way I can have a base to work from as far as fixing it.
Right.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I think that would be an interesting stream experience in and of itself. Like having a dev sort of see a montage of crashes and then reach out to the person that was recording those crashes and then ask them to like stream it and be there on the stream and talk to people. That would be an interesting way to connect with the audience.
I think it is a really interesting way to connect to and with the audience. It really caught a lot of people's attention that they showed up to that stream, and it's just kind of imagining what that would be like, especially with Top Game Review, if that became a more frequent and regular thing, to be able
Oh
to
man,
have that developer interaction.
especially if you were streaming, say, something like Mortal Kombat X and have Ed Boon show up.
Right. That would be incredible,
Or
and we can all kind of talk about this thing that we've seen.
after the stream's finished blowing up.
Yeah, after it's got done blowing up, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" But it would be really neat, and I think that could possibly be the next level or new level of, well, just video game industry and community where we've all got the ability, we all have the ability to sit down, talk about what we've seen, we can share those things with the world. You know, they're able to make what they make, share it with the world, we're able to play it, we're also able to share it with the world, we're all able to communicate together, and I think that if we spend more of that time having that useful communication back and forth where it's like, well, why did you do this? Kind of explain it to me so I can kind of understand where you're coming from with your design process, and then you say that back to me, and then I give you the actual useful, non-dickish feedback. I think we're going to see a vast improvement in the quality of work. I think the most important thing about that experience of having so many members of the dev team there with us while we were experiencing that was we broke down the Berlin Wall of video games. Like, that was really it. Like, this wasn't, like a really, really, really tiny indie dev. These are obviously, they were industry veterans, but we got to that point where we had developers and we had the consumer in one spot, interacting back and forth, having a shared appreciation for this one piece of work that you guys are watching me play. And it's like, that's their, as I've said, that's their baby. That's the thing that they've poured their hearts into, and, seeing it fall and falter. But people were able to go, there are issues with this game, but there's really, really a good and magical thing here. And, I hate to say it, but, no, I don't hate to say it. I see that a lot of hearts got touched by that game. Mine especially. To sit down and play. We made comparisons to Chrono Cross, we made comparisons to Suikoden, Earthbound. What other games did we mention?
Superhero League of Hoboken.
Mm-hmm.
I think like some of the older PC RPGs, like some of the older Elder Scrolls RPGs too.
Or even something like Bard's Tale. Really, really old Bard's Tale.
Oh, yeah.
And looking at that, and here was the thing for me. It was definitely, I jumped in the time machine when I sat down to play Citizens of Earth. And it made me think back to being 13, 14 years old, and younger than that. And it was just, it was going back in time and remembering not just the games that helped shape me into the person I am as far as understanding narrative and game experiences and taking things away from that. You could see it. Like, it was really big. It was really important to see not just these people go back to their own past and make something that was very faithful to that old style experience, but to bring some newer design philosophies to it. But going down that memory lane of fucking vagueness in games was quite the trip. You know, here's something that other people didn't directly see that kind of disturbed me. Speaking of that trip down memory lane, and I realized what kind of state of gaming that we're in, and it kind of bothered me. When I got sent those keys and sat down and got my instructions, there was also a small guide sent along with this because there was the expectation that people would struggle with this type of game. And I was like, and you guys saw me, I didn't even look at that guide. I didn't look at anything. I wanted to walk in there blind to just do it. And you saw me get in there and stomp some shit out. Just like, boom, flew through that game. Busted out 40 hours, 2 days. You know, it was barely two. I think I slept for only one part of it and then came back and knocked it out in 40 hours, covered in 2 days of a streaming session. And I'm sitting here thinking of, who the fuck would need a guide for this? Like, most of the game tells you what you need to know, and you're going to have to be adventurous, and you're going to have to explore, because that's what RPGs do. And so the idea that there would be enough reviewers that need their hand held through this experience tells me a couple things. Either, one, I'm really fucking old, because I'm used to not having instructions for games. You know, just like, back with NES carts and Super Nintendo, there were hardly any tutorials for that. Like, you either figured it out, Johnny on the spot, on the fly, or you were lucky enough to have the manual. You know, we didn't have in-game tutorials as a commonplace thing as we do today. It also made me think about the age range of other reviewers today, where playing something like this is a completely vague experience for them. Just like, what the hell am I looking at here? Because most of those design philosophies might not be in practice anymore in quite a few instances. And I also realized because of that, because I came from that school of gaming, I cut my teeth on that kind of stuff. My point of view is going to be very different from the much younger reviewer than I.
Yeah, I think that for those that got raised on the old school, and I mean this like Super Nintendo era RPGs, I think that they're used to a certain level of being sort of forced to stumble through a game. Because the maps, for example, used to be pretty obtuse as far as games went. Like, now there's objective markers pretty much everywhere, and they help with most of the stuff. Like, the secrets, normally secrets are still unmarked, although I'm guessing that someday an easy mode will be created that will show all that stuff, but...
Looking at that as what you're describing, it makes me think back to two games that are classic ball busters in that sense, where you were either made by the game or you were broken by it. And it makes me think of Metroid, and it makes me think of Legend of Zelda. Like, I could tell you plenty of stories of so many kids who got stuck within the first 2 minutes of the original Metroid, because, Metroid can't crawl. Like, they didn't realize to go get the morph ball, and then you can proceed from there. Like, yeah. They were stuck. And, if you were playing Metroid without the instruction manual, you didn't have a damn map. You didn't have anything. You needed to figure that shit out. And so it was really a rite of passage. If you're like, I have beaten the original Metroid, other kids were like, what kind of a fucking demon are you? To be able to pull that off. Looking at The Legend of Zelda, how many key dungeons that you had to get in to finish the game were completely hidden from you, and you had to do some weird shit to get to them. Well, you need to go over here, you need to get this candle, and then you need to burn this particular bush in this particular pattern, or you need to go up in the graveyard and you need to push these particular tombstones. It doesn't fucking tell you can even push tombstones. You didn't know you could do that. It was just because people got to the point where they're like, I want to beat this so badly that I'm going to try everything. And people were like, you can push rocks in this. And the rest of us said, get the fuck out of here. And then we all had to go home. And it's like, then we figured it out. And so it was
Yep.
kind of a community involved thing of getting through those games because you got 40, 50 kids all playing this one thing. One kid out of that group figures that one thing out, and everyone else proceeded, you know? And then that kid got stuck and he couldn't figure out what he was going to do. And it was a different kid that figured out the next step. And so people advance through those experiences together by each person solving a little unique problem in their little game groups or their little game communities.
Like organic living strategy guides before strategy guides were a thing.
That is a perfect description of what that was. I mean, hell, I could tell you plenty of times from being a kid where you'd be at home, you play your game, whatever, all that, go to bed, get up, go to school the next day, and you couldn't wait until recess so you could hit up your partners and figure out where the hell everybody was at. You'd be like, man, I'm stuck on this. You're getting your ass whipped. You'd spend all the lunch period just talking about this game and then getting hyped to get the hell out of school so you could go and apply all that stuff you just learned.
Yeah.
Like, God, I mean, just how many times how did we learn about cheats? We learned about secrets from our partners in crime and people crowdsourcing strategy guides for games, because that's what that shit was. Like, let's put it this way. Here's the mind-blowing revelation of that. What then happened is that all those kids, you, me, the audience, all those, we grew the fuck up and became the game facts community.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. We grew up, we were like, wait a minute, we can do this shit online. And then people stopped buying strategy guides because we were doing that same thing. And it's weird to see people who aren't a part of that experience. And it's weird to see, again, like, the developer shouldn't have to send me, or excuse me, not the developer, the publisher shouldn't have to send me, pro tips and stuff like, if you're having a hard time, this character can change difficulty level, or here's the way that you can get other people leveled up, or if you're having a difficulty, you're struggling doing this, and so on and so forth. Hey, video games are a struggle. That's what you do. Like, you sit down and a game presents a challenge, and you tell yourself that you are going to rise to that challenge. And it's not a knock against the publisher or developer. It's just kind of it's all an observation of the current state of gaming, where, just as we said, we crowdsource solutions to our problems. I haven't bought a strategy guide in fucking years. Like, I just haven't. Usually I go and look and see what the community is doing. I play Monster Hunter a lot. It's pretty well known at this point. That's my jam. I'm getting my ass kicked. I'm like, okay, there's something I'm missing here. And, I go take a look, get the general lowdown on whatever's going on with the monster, and then I go try again. Or I can't figure a particular thing out. I go look at the community, see what actual other gamers are doing, and see how people saw that problem. Hell, I mean, so many of us play, Demon Souls, Dark Souls, etc. It's that same thing again, that crowd-driven solution to problems. And maybe that's one of the reasons that franchise alone is popular. Simply because we're doing that same thing that we did as kids, just with better graphics. It's like, man, I'm stuck here. I don't know what the hell to do. And someone's like, I got it. And then we're all like, oh. And that's kind of how the same progression happens in the Soul series. It's really weird to think about that. And there's a lot of people who are craving that. Series wouldn't be popular if it wasn't.
I can also think of another type of game which both of you will be familiar with that also relied a lot on not quite the same kind of crowdsourcing, but on a type of crowdsourcing, which is fighting games. People who play fighting games, they find out all sorts of crazy combos they can do, and that sort of thing gets passed along.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness, yes. You are speaking my language, good sir.
Yeah, by all means. Continue with that thought.
And I think that one of the reasons why fighting games are also this popular is because they're also a sharing experience rather than just being fun. They also become a sort of a I think that I call them the original social gaming,
Elaborate.
because that was the type of game that it might be fun alone, but the draw of the crowd was the thing that made them shine.
Like the reason why arcades are so popular normally.
Oh yeah, arcades still exist to this day. I think it's in great part because of fighting games. Because as much as the other genres were popular in or were played in arcades, I think that fighting games were always the thing that brought more people to an arcade.
I mean, even before the arcade I used to work at closed, the big games that normally drew everybody in, where it wasn't people bringing their kids in just to drop them off, like the big community games were always our fighting games. Soul Calibur 2, Tekken 5, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Heck, even the original Capcom vs. SNK. I mean,
Oh hell yeah!
they still brought in a they still brought in a good number of people on average, and it was always those people crowding around those games and either sharing memories of what they used to do, teams they used to pick, and the conversation just sprung up organically because there was that social component.
Yeah, there was always that that small side talk about what's the latest big combo that was discovered and how someone managed to break the previous one. There was
You know,
always a sort of a evolution in it.
you guys are getting real deep with this because I hadn't taken that into consideration. And again, you're absolutely right. It's a perfect elaboration on what I was just talking about with that crowdsourced kind of community thing. I mean, just like you said with fighting games, we didn't have every damn move listed on the cabinet. You got the basic rundown, and that was it. To show my age, I remember when the original Street Fighter came out, not Street Fighter 2, but the original Street Fighter, and I was playing that in arcades. Nobody knew that you could do a damn fireball. It just kind of ended up happening one day, and people fucking stopped. And every quarter from that point, when somebody realized, like, whoa, what the hell is that? Like, every quarter at that point ended up being devoted to someone trying to figure out how the hell that move even happened. And it's same thing, just like we said, community-driven strategy guides, sorting out problems, so on and so forth. And the same thing happened in the arcade, right there on the spot. And the man who knew all the moves was the damn king. I mean,
More
I
often
know
than
plenty of
not,
us could talk about Mortal Kombat in that, and figuring out all the fatalities and so on and so forth.
more often than not, at least in my circle, it started with being me.
So, we're definitely going down memory road here, and you'd think that, anyone else who might have just come in the middle of that were like, what the hell does this have to do with Citizens of Earth? Well, it's absolutely relevant because this game is a complete callback to those times, where it's a direct reference back to an entirely different day of gaming. And I have to say this, that this game is specifically designed. It was made for us old folks. It was just like, here's the thing for you old fogies. And it's like, yeah, it absolutely is. Without a shadow of a doubt, it is for us folks, the target audience, and you can tell just through the entire design process that this is who it was made for. I want to get onto the topic of spoilers here. And there's some spoilers that have to be talked about with Citizens of Earth. So if you haven't played it, you haven't finished it, you don't want to hear it, obviously I would encourage you to mute or just not listen in on that. I mean, clearly stay for the conversation in chat and things like that, but we are going to have a spoiler-filled discussion, simply because it was a major thing that ended up happening. Even the supercut for Citizens of Earth will contain this sequence, and so that's something I wanted to address. So that was your heads up, that was your warning. We're going to kind of go ahead and continue with that, though. So the ending of that game
Oh god.
Rustled my fucking jimmies.
Oh.
I didn't come to this shit to have
Oh.
feelings.
Oh god.
Especially when I'm that tired. I was 24 hours in, I was like, I'm gonna beat this game. And then this shit starts making me fucking cry. And I'm like, you
Oh.
son of a, why would you do this to me? And it was, I'm not gonna front. I had to mute my mic during that because there were some manly tears creeping out of my eyes here. I was like, ooh, boy, that's a sad little story. You know, you sit down, you're playing, as we talked about, you're playing with the vice president of the Earth, and there are aliens involved and all kinds of goofy stuff, and they directly do a almost full callback to Earthbound and other games like that. The final battle, which is more, I'm trying to think of the word for this. It's more like a formality than it is an actual full combat sequence for sake of story. The reason it became so impactful is that as you're playing through this game, and you're playing as the VP, he does no goddamn fighting in that game. He doesn't. Everybody else is doing his dirty work for him. And you kind of hate him for that. Because you're just like, yeah, you're just another politician taking advantage of people. When you get to the last battle sequence of the game, they put you in control of the VP, and nobody gets to help him. You don't get to have a party. And so he starts leveling up on his own, and he starts learning skills that you've never got to use during that. And for those that have played Persona 3 and played out and have beaten Persona 3, they kind of reference into that too. And just like with Earthbound. And all the characters that you've recruited to help you along, they come out and they say some really major stuff about the VP, and you realize, well, he's not really an asshole, and he's a little naive, and yeah, he's kind of aloof, but just because he's that kind of person, it doesn't mean that his heart isn't necessarily in the wrong place. He's just really bad at communicating things, like. And so, all these characters that you've met over the course of the story come along, and they talk about how just being around him and dealing with this little situation has enriched their lives, and they turn around and they're like, and this is the kind of person that you've become and all that. And so he ends up, being the super evil, but it was just so endearingly sweet just to see that. Like, even Ace was like, man, dude, I didn't come here to feel like this. First thing in the morning, I didn't ask for this. It got us out of nowhere.
Oh.
It was very nice, and I don't know who did the writing for the story, but it was a hell of a twist to see that just go down. It was just really, really fascinating. It was really interesting, and it charmed the fucking pants right off me. And I was just like, 11 out of 10, it was okay. Like, pulling that shit, it was all right.
The sniffling just, this is fine.
Yeah, I was like crying like Lincoln Osiris during Tropic Thunder, like drooling all over yourself. And it was like, I didn't expect this for a game that funny to just boom catch you. They hit you with a feels bomb right out from the left blind side. You didn't even see it coming, and then suddenly I had all these damn feelings. So whoever wrote the story, it's really weird how it comes together, but you're just like, yeah, that nonsensical story strangely made sense. And no, go ahead.
What made it even more, I think what made it even more impactful for me was the fact that while that whole ending sequence was going, while that whole last battle was going, it brought back memories of what I had seen over the course of the rest of the playthrough, and it's like, oh wait, that actually, it's like literally bringing back little bits of, I guess, foreshadowing as far as the VP's character development over the course of the whole thing, in addition to, the characterizations from everybody from the scientist to the car salesman to the hippies. And it's just like, you see these hints at how the VP is growing as a character over the course of the game, but you don't really know how it all adds up until that very last scene where it just kind of snowballs and everything just all of a sudden links together and you're going, oh man, and you can't stop the tears.
You know, and I think the important part, the really important part about that is that that should also be very indicative of the reviewer's experience. There was enough that happened during that part of the game that Ace is talking about that would significantly impact a reviewer's point of view. And if no one kind of references that, or even, you know, without spoiling, but references that ending or talks about how that ends, I would just be cautious, because it would seem like, I'm not going to say be, it would seem like maybe this person hasn't played all the way through or experienced this entire title, because there's a lot of characterization that happens, but they happen over the entire experience. It's over the entire 40 hours of the damn game. You know, characters will have individual little quips, and they'll have neat little points of view about certain things depending on who's in your party, who's with you, who's not, so on and so forth. I can't even begin to imagine, because I didn't experience all of them, but I saw enough, especially replaying sequences real quick and having a different party out and seeing them having a different little take on that situation. There's a lot of character in every character in Citizens of Earth, and as Ace said, it all comes full circle. Like, it seriously blindsided me to see where all that came into play and how that all came together, and I was like, oh, I'll be damned. They pulled some tricks here that me, as a writer, didn't expect. And if you can catch me off guard, considering it's, you know, it's my other job to make up people for a living, and you catch me by surprise, that's usually one of the good metrics of there's something worth paying attention to here. You know, as we're kind of coming around to the end of this community discussion for Citizens of Earth, and then I'm going to try and get my written review going on Twitch. I'm not sure if that's going to happen directly this evening, but I want to get that taken care of here rather soon. Especially because, well, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate is dropping on Friday, and I'm really, really hyped for that. I mean, the hype is real. I'm just saying, Monster Hunter is about to ruin my Valentine's Day. That's all I'm getting at. Like, I'm like, look, baby, it's either you or Monster Hunter, and I've had Monster Hunter longer than I should just shut up. I should just shut the hell up. I'm going to end up getting divorced over this. I was like, this is going to be funny. Maybe not. No. Maybe I should be considering my marriage. I've had Monster Hunter longer than I've had you. It's one or the other. I gotta take Monster Hunter. Fuck it. I went all the way in. I'm going all the way in. Our relationship is longer. It means something.
Why not both?
I am getting fucking divorced tomorrow.
Oh, come on. Why not both?
Why not both? I don't know. I'm just saying. There's going to be some sleepless nights with Monster Hunter. That's all I'm getting at. I'm just saying I'm in. I'm committed. I put a ring on it. All of it. So, with Citizens of Earth, sorry. Fuck.
I wish I could see the look on the Mist's face right now.
With Citizens of Earth, and looking at the entirety of that experience, it was worth it. Abso-fucking-lutely. I loved that someone took the time, and this is just me as an individual guy talking, I feel like someone said that it was worth the time to look at my own youth and go, you know, it's very much so. Not only is it a love letter to those games that we've referenced, but it's almost a love letter to those players that made those games happen. Because this whole industry exists because people make them, but we play them. And it was saying, it almost felt like, thanks for being there. And that was really nice. It was nice to experience that, and it was a hell of a trip down memory lane.
You know, it was a 40-hour long thank you for playing.
That's a great... Well, wow. that's powerful. I'm just saying that's something you put on the box right there. That really was what it was. It was a 40-hour long. Thanks for playing video games all these years. Thanks for playing RPGs all these years. I didn't get into this part too much during the game, and I'm going to poke around with it just a little bit more before I get the review written. But not only do you sit down, you play the whole damn game for 40 hours, which is a really nice length. Again, for what you paid versus what you get. You get a 40-hour, almost minimum RPG, and turn around, there's a goddamn New Game Plus mode. Like one of your final recruits in the story itself is a pretty major character, and they're the ones that give you the ability to play New Game Plus. And when you start the game over, you start with all levels reset and everything, but you have all the citizens that you unlocked to join in your team in that first playthrough. They're all back, so you just have access to all of them. And considering how much of the game, a good chunk of the game, is devoted, like as far as hours spent into recruiting those citizens, you could do some really fascinating stuff with that, especially regarding that little leveling issue that I talked about. You could start that right at the start of the game, and it's a terrifying prospect. Now, I'm not sure what other features are additionally unlocked through that New Game Plus, but it's there. Just the fact that, yep, come right back into it, do it again, experience it, stuff that you missed. You have new advantages just because you have access to those party members that you wouldn't before. Just imagine the boss fights where you absolutely would not have access to those citizens during a typical playthrough, and now you do. I mean, that would severely change the experience, and I'm really interested to kind of see what the general feel of that would be. But it's crazy. Again, it's a throwback. Boom, all the way back. We're going back to Chrono Trigger days, where it's like, wait a minute, you got to play this game again. Well, why should I play it again? Because during your first playthrough, you're going to barely scratch through maybe a third of the levels, and you can max this fucker out. And there's a ton of skills that you couldn't learn in the first playthrough and all that, and it's like, wow, I'll be damned, you know? And adding that new level of value to it, just like if you like this and you want to come back to it, by all means do so again. And there's a ton of stuff that's going to change for you just based on that. And so I don't feel like they even needed to, but they felt compelled to, and they wanted to, because that's what we're used to, and it's just like, hats off to you guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that it was a game that felt like a game.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what games used to be, it felt like a game.
It felt like it felt like something that you pick up to have something that you pick up to have fun.
Oh, yeah.
It really was. Yeah. It was just that thing that you have fun with, and there are going to be people who are just like, what is this crap? And for us older folks, we're going to be like, no, this is the bomb. You don't know about this. This is old school. It's like, I talk about playing video games with my niece and trying to show her those older experiences. This is one of those games where if I put it in front of her, she would not understand why the hell some of those rules are in place. To me, it's perfectly normal because that's how it was when I grew up. The kind of comparison that I had made at one point was going, this is like the difference between black and white film and then the full-blown IMAX experience, 3D, we spent about 472 million hours rendering out stuff in special effects. All that, and you take a kid, you take like a 12, 13-year-old kid, and that's what they grew up with. They're used to, full crazy color and all that, and then there's folks that grew up with black and white film, and there's always going to be that soft spot for black and white because it was an entirely different time. It was a different kind of pacing. It doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with it, but it's very, very, very damn different. And for us that grew up, seeing or that grew up, and video games grew with us. I'm in my early 30s, and most of the development, or not development, but most of the growth of the game industry has occurred over the past 30 years. And so I get to take a trip back in time to that point, not just in the history of gaming, but also that point in my own life. It means more to me than it will to a pretty decent number of people. But for those of us who came from that age, it will likely impact us in a similar way.
Oh, yeah.
Did you guys have any additional thoughts that you kind of wanted to add on to that before we wrap up this community discussion on it?
None that I could think of right offhand. I'm still, I'm, I'm, I'm I think someone's cutting onions somewhere in the apartment.
Oh, God.
So I think we did a great little discussion, and there was a lot to think about. There were some new ideas that were presented with this community discussion of citizens of Earth that I hadn't even considered, I hadn't even thought of, and I think a lot of people hadn't thought of it. And that's the most important part of having these discussions and just talking about that experience and what we saw and how we kind of felt about it, and getting that input from the audience and taking those points of view. I I just want to thank everyone for kind of tuning in. And as I said, every game that we play on the Top Game Review will have this type of discussion, and we'll share those ideas and we'll share those thoughts. If you ever want to be a part of that discussion, especially if you're playing the same game that I am, by all means, just volunteer and say I would love to be in on the community discussion for this title, and we'll get you in here and we'll have even more discussion like that. The next community discussion that we're going to be doing will be for Dying Light, which I also powered played through like a fucking maniac for some reason, but I was having fun, god damn it. But that's really what we do here, is we share those ideas, we share those thoughts, because at the end of the day, many video game experiences in certain aspects are very subjective. It's been pretty painfully clear just from the things that I've been saying here. Just like I said, my niece is going to take a completely different, have a completely different experience with Citizens of Earth in comparison to mine, because, well, it means something to me because I grew up and that was what we had. And this is just, this is the remaster, this is the remix of that type of game. And it's going to be a different experience, and we're all going to take a different experience from it. But my hope is that we can reveal about these different games and see what worked and see what caught a lot of different people's attention, and where we found the happiness from, where we found the joy, and where we found the problems, and where we find the gripes and all of that. So I just wanted to thank people for taking the time to listen to us prattle on and also hear about my impending fucking divorce because video. And next time we come back on here, I expect to do that very, very soon. You'll hear an announcement from me on that for the Dying Light discussion. I think that's going to be very, very lively. And just, thank you for taking the time to listen to that, and I want to see more people here with us just talking about the video, because we don't do it enough. It doesn't have to be an antagonistic experience. We can have different opinions on that and share those thoughts and share those ideas, and we can have a good time doing it. Except for me, because I'm now single and ready to make love. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm not 100% sure for those who obviously hang out with us during Op Mandatory Fun, where it's just kind of let our hair down and just play whatever and be silly and talk a bunch of silliness. I'm not sure if we're bringing anything up, but please, by all means, go find me on Twitter, and I'll try and figure out what's going down with that, and I'll send something out. I'd like to thank you for being here with my main mod and my fighting game guy, so I want to go ahead and give them a chance to tell you where you can find them and where we can be found in the future with the rest of our reviews and where we're playing games and stuff at. Go ahead, Ace.
Well, for those of you that already know who I am, you know, Blazing Ace Nelson here. I have my YouTube channel up, youtube.com/Blazing Ace Nelson. I actually just put up a review for Guilty Gear Xrd that you might want to check out if you're, if you're inclined to do so, and if
Oh,
you're
damn.
inclined to listen to, me and someone else ramble on like we've just done. But yeah, check out my reviews on my channel. Other than that, you can find me on Twitter. DangerCombo2012 is my username there. Um, yeah, those are the two big places that you'll find me, and hopefully, once I'm able to get things stabilized, I'll be able to start putting up more reviews as well. So you don't necessarily have a direct competitor, Ollie, especially since I am going to be doing a good amount of shilling for you as well. But other than that, that's where you'll find me. Just feel free to hit me up, and if you're up for talking video games, I'm all ears.
The dog. Tell him.
Well, I'm Hikar QB, and if you want to find me on Twitter, it's just it's it's an annoying Twitter handle to spell out, so I'll just post it with my introduction in the Top Game Review site. So that'll get sorted there. People should see a few more bios show up there soon, I hope. So
Of course.
I'll see more people in the Top Review site, hopefully making good comments, and on the Top Review Twitch channel.
Absolutely.
Take it away, Oliver.
I'm the host and the main reviewer for the Top Game Review. I'm Oliver Campbell. I've been gaming for hardcore for 28 years. To give you an idea of how goddamn old I am, you can find me on Twitter at Oliver B Campbell. Also, you can join the Top Review community at thetopgamereview.com. You can see our reviews or our other posts. Our Twitch, for that is embedded right in the page, so you can just find that right on site. We also keep a little calendar or try to keep a little what's coming up or what we're working on there as well. We just started to, or I've just started to take funding for the Top Game Review, and one of the things that we do here is that I don't run any advertisement, so no ads. You don't have to worry about that. The only ads that you'll ever see on that content is mandated on the platform in which it is. So if you go to the Top Game Review, you'll see ads run from WordPress. If you're on YouTube and YouTube decides to force an ad on there, that's the way that you will see that. But I don't, because I generally am annoyed with ads, and so I'm thinking about my readership and my community and how they might feel about that too. The Top Game Review is directly funded by viewers like you, because I totally just PBS'd everyone right now, but it's period. So every game, every game done is absolutely paid for by the community. Through currently, the only thing I have set up is Patreon, but you'll also be able to do that through the YouTube's tip jar function as well as other ways. So you can find the way to fund that is right for you. And the only time that I make anything off of Top Game Review is when I do my fucking job and review games instead of sitting around philosophizing, so to speak. So, those are options available to you. You can find those on the Top Game Review site. I make it a point not to shove that kind of stuff down people's throats, just to let you know that it's there. If you like what we're doing here, by all means, if you think it's worth $1, then goddamn it, give me $1. Like, I got to get my Snickers bars somehow. Or it's like, look, I either need Snickers bars or I'm going to need money to get divorced because Monster Hunter is going to ruin my life. So you can find me, like I said, at on Twitter at Oliver B. Campbell. You can find us at the Top Game Review on thetopgamereview.com, and you can find us on Twitch at 3DogH 4G, and that 4 is the actual number 4. So I'd just like to thank you for tuning in, and don't worry about waiting too much longer to have the next discussion on Dying Light, and keep your eyes peeled for the world-famous top game review supercut of Citizens of Earth. There's guaranteed to be some laughs and some chuckles, and it'll give you a really good idea of what that experience is like. So I'd just like to thank you for being here this evening, and have a good night.
Take
Have
it
a good
easy,
night,
everybody.
folks.